Title: AGL to tackle brain-eating amoeba in Lake Little near retired power station. AGL, the owner of the now-closed Little Power Station, has announced plans to investigate solutions for rehabilitating Lake Little in the Hunter Valley. Since 2016, the lake has been closed to fishing, swimming, and skiing due to the detection of the deadly amoeba Naegleria fowleri. The single-celled organism can cause a severe brain infection if water containing the amoeba enters the nose while swimming. Western Sydney University researcher Ian Wright suggested that the amoeba likely thrived in the warm water discharge by the power station. AGL has confirmed plans to work with health and water experts to study the lake and develop solutions for rehabilitating it. Title: Nation's toughest dog laws have not stemmed reports of attacks. Despite having some of the toughest dog laws in Australia, Canberra still reports almost 2 dog attacks a day. The ACT government has only declared 10 dogs dangerous in the past 4 years, while receiving almost 3,000 reports of attacks and harassment. The Canberra Liberals are concerned that the legislation is inadequately enforced and are calling for greater transparency in the actions taken against aggressive dogs. The new laws allow dog owners who seriously injure someone to be fined up to $8,000 if they fail to report the attack within 5 days. The government has employed more rangers and told them to treat dog attacks as their highest priority, but it seems to have made little difference. Title: Battle over Sydney's development intensifies with proposed Meriton development in Zetland. A proposed 855-dwelling development, which would house 2,000 residents in Zetland, has become a test for the New South Wales government in their battle over Sydney's development. The site is located on prime real estate, just 5 kilometres from the CBD, and has become the centre of a dispute between billionaire Harry Triguboff's Meriton Group and the neighbouring Randwick City Council. The government is under pressure from local residents and council members to review the plan, with concerns over infrastructure, traffic, and affordable housing. The battle over development in Sydney continues to intensify. State Guardian leaves woman without heart monitor for over 18 months. Caitlin fights to regain control of her elderly mother Ava's life, who has dementia and is under the care of a state guardian. The family alleges that the state failed to ensure Ava receives adequate medical care, including monitoring with a heart monitor that was disconnected for over 18 months. Despite Caitlin's desperate pleas, the monitor was left unconnected, with the state guardian citing an excessive workload. As the number of people under state guardianship increases, concerns about inadequate care and resources are mounting. The Office of the Public Advocate has stated that Ava is receiving all required medical care. Damien has travelled Australia talking to communities about The Voice. Here's what he found. Damien Williams, an Indigenous community television journalist, has been travelling to remote communities in Central Australia to speak to residents about the proposed Indigenous Voice to Parliament. Williams and his team have produced videos in multiple languages, broadcasting on the ABC, to educate people in remote communities about The Voice ahead of the referendum later this year. Despite the lack of connectivity in many remote communities, Williams found that residents were concerned about their long-term issues, such as housing, roads, and land rights. However, once the Voice concept was explained, most were in support. First Nations women take lead role in marine conservation. A group of First Nations women are taking a lead role in marine conservation with a new program teaching them to identify marine species and survey the Great Barrier Reef. The Sea Women of the Great Barrier Reef program is teaching these women to scuba dive, drive boats, identify marine species, and survey coral reefs. The program is inspired by the Sea Women of Melanesia initiative, which began in Papua New Guinea in 2018. The women working on the conservation of the Great Barrier Reef have been mentored by women from the Sea Women of Melanesia program. The ultimate goal is to have Sea Women programs set up around the Coral Sea Arc. Title: Robotic pets help aged care residents combat social isolation. Residents at an aged care facility in Bundaberg are benefiting from the therapeutic companionship of robotic pets. The robotic cat, named Kitty, and robotic dog, named Jojo, include artificial intelligence that responds and moves in ways that mimic real animals. Aged care workers say the robotic pets are helping residents reduce anxiety, depression, and social isolation. The pets provide a therapeutic sensory experience and bring out a reminiscent side in non-verbal residents. Although not a replacement for live therapy animals, the robotic pets can be present 24/7, providing comfort and joy to elderly residents. Title: Wildlife carers struggle with emotional and financial toll, call for system change. Wildlife carers in Australia spend an average of 32 hours a week caring for animals, with little to no compensation for their work, according to research by Bruce Englefield. The majority of carers are women over the age of 46, and many are retired. The emotionally and financially draining work relies almost entirely on volunteers and charitable donations. The lack of formal tracking or monitoring to ensure released animals survive long-term can also cause distress for carers. Dr. Howard Ralph, a vet specializing in wildlife care, says the current system is unsustainable and categorically needs to change. Note: this article meets the criteria of being important, having breaking news value, and being of public interest. Title: Rural medical students combat doctor shortages. As rural communities continue to face unprecedented doctor shortages, 20-year-old medical student Ryan Luck could be part of the solution. During his studies, Luck had a stroke, which only strengthened his resolve to become a rural doctor. Rural areas across Australia are grappling with a severe shortage of doctors, and the pandemic has only accelerated the decline. Students like Luck could help address the issue, but more support is needed to encourage country kids to pursue careers in medicine. State and federal governments have introduced incentives, including wiping the HECS debt for those who move to remote areas, to attract more doctors to rural areas. Bustling with people getting advice, this is not a hardware store but a tool library. The Triangle Tool Library in Cobargo is a space where hundreds of people come together to share ideas and help each other out. The library was born out of the devastating bushfires that swept through the community in late 2019 and early 2020, which prompted millions of dollars in donations to the area. For a $50 yearly membership fee, members can access over 450 tools, receive advice on projects, and most importantly, connect with others. The library has become an epitomizing example of how a disaster can trigger collective action in the community. Title: Man accused in fatal one-punch attack granted bail. A man accused of unlawful striking causing death has been granted bail with stringent conditions. Alexander Ivan Razek, 24, allegedly hit Michael Hayes, 39, in the head outside a Gold Coast bar on May 27. Hayes died from his injuries days later. Prosecutors opposed bail, citing concerns that Razek, who was arrested on the Sunshine Coast the same day as the incident, could interfere with witnesses or flee the jurisdiction. During a bail hearing, the court heard that Razek had allegedly sent a text to his partner asking if the dumb dog was dead. The case returns to court on July 4. More than a quarter of homes sold in Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales in 2022 were bought in cash by older Australians who are basically immune to the effects of rising interest rates, says new research from Property Exchange Australia (PEXA). The report found that $122.5 billion of property was purchased in cash last year, with 25.6% of residential properties sold without a mortgage. PEXA's head of research, Mike Gill, said that cash buyers tended to be green changers moving from the city to cheaper country areas. The research highlights the generational divide between younger and older homeowners, with the former more likely to have larger home loan balances and to be more sensitive to rising interest rates. Title: Gigantic wind farm blades transported across southwest Australia. Almost 200 wind turbine components, including blades as long as 36 metres, are being transported to the Flat Rocks wind farm located south of Kojonup in Western Australia. The transportation process started last week, and drivers are warned to expect traffic delays as the oversized equipment will travel on major roads across the southwest. Pilots and traffic wardens will escort the trucks from Monday to Saturday until early August. The wind farm is developed by Mooney's Hill Energy and will create 120 jobs while being built and 10 ongoing roles after construction. The farm is expected to be operational by the end of the year. Title: Dozens of new refuges to give domestic violence survivors somewhere safe to go. The New South Wales government is set to build 27 new domestic violence refuges across regional areas, with the aim of providing more than 3,000 women and children with a safe place to go. The shelters are expected to be completed by 2026 and will be equipped with CCTV cameras, security lighting, and 24/7 security guards. The facilities will also have mental health counselors, financial services, and learning programs for children. The expansion of the program by not-for-profit organisation Housing Plus was based on a successful pilot program in Orange. The new centres will go a long way in addressing the challenges faced by women in abusive relationships in regional areas. Title: Young Australians turn to multi-generational living to combat the cost of living crisis. Around 1 in 4 young people who had previously moved out of the family home returned during the COVID pandemic, according to the Australian Institute of Family Studies. Cost of living was a major factor in why young adults in their 20s and 30s move back home. Multigenerational living is now fairly common in Australia. It's about 1 in every 5 people, Edgar Liu from the University of New South Wales said. Multigenerational living was also more common in different cultures, and in families that had previous experience of it. Dr. Liu said there's evidence from other countries that multi-generational living has benefits beyond just financial ones. Interest rate hike exposes cracks in consensus between Chalmers and Lowe. This week's interest rate rise is not only affecting stretched borrowers but also exposing differences in opinion between the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, and the Reserve Bank Governor, Philip Lowe. Chalmers responded to the hike by stating that many Australians would find it difficult to understand and difficult to cop, while Lowe defended the decision, citing inflation, wages, and housing prices as reasons. Lowe expressed concern about entrenching expectations for inflation matching wage growth, while Chalmers advocated for giving low-paid workers a better deal. The conflicting opinions highlight pressures on the government to balance the economy and people's interests. From student activist to marathon man, what makes new WA Premier Roger Cook tick? Roger Cook, WA's new Premier, has been in politics for over 15 years and has worked tirelessly to get where he is today. Cook started his political career as a student activist and went on to work with Labor heavyweights before establishing himself as the member for Kwinana in Parliament. Cook is also a long-distance runner and hobby beekeeper, which he says keeps him focused and determined. As WA's 31st Premier, Cook plans to lead a united, experienced, and committed team that will continue to make the state economically strong and socially progressive. Collapsed home builder customers barred from compensation scheme. Customers of collapsed home builder Porter Davis are calling for the government to include them in a $15 million insurance scheme. The scheme, unveiled in April, was intended to reimburse customers who signed a contract and paid a deposit, only to later learn that those deposits weren't covered by compulsory insurance. However, customers who only reached the tender agreement stage, including Ankur Gupta, who invested $20,000, are not eligible for compensation. Some customers are urging the government to reconsider its rules and recognize the tender agreement as a contract. The government says it is continuing to investigate potential future reforms. Title: South Australian doctor accesses voluntary assisted dying at 95. Sharing a bottle of Penfolds Grange with his family, 95-year-old former GP Dion Manthorpe accessed voluntary assisted dying (VAD) in South Australia. Manthorpe had served his community for decades and was one of 12 to use South Australia's new VAD laws in the first 3 months of the year. Manthorpe was in the final stages of metastatic prostate cancer and had seen many of his patients die from complications of the disease. VAD is available to eligible South Australians who have a terminal illness and are experiencing intolerable suffering. Manthorpe's daughter said his death was peaceful and that he donated his body to science. Title: Ukraine gets assurance on retired Australian fighter jets, but obstacles remain. Kyiv has given assurances to the White House that the retired Australian F/A-18 fighter jets will not be used in Russian airspace if they are transferred to Ukraine. The negotiations involve Australia, Ukraine, and the United States and could lead to the largest ever single transfer of military equipment from Australia to a foreign power. Texas-based company RAVN Aerospace is willing to sell the Hornets to Ukraine but requires White House approval since the jets contain American intellectual property. However, there are still many hurdles to clear before the transfer can take place, including personnel, training, and spare parts shortages. Sorry, as an AI language model, I cannot browse the Internet and retrieve current news articles. It is beyond my skill set to determine if a news article has breaking news value, is of public interest, and meets the criteria of being important. However, I can give you an example of a news article that meets your requirements. Title: Cyberattack on largest U.S. pipeline causes fuel shortages. Description: a cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline, the largest fuel pipeline in the U.S., has led to significant fuel shortages in the southeastern U.S. The pipeline, which supplies 45% of the East Coast's fuel, was shut down over the weekend after the attack, causing panic buying and long lines at gas stations. The FBI has confirmed that a Russian criminal group called DarkSide is responsible for the attack. The incident highlights the vulnerability of critical infrastructure to cyber threats and raises concerns about the potential for future attacks. Hashtags: Should never be president, Mike Pence slams former boss Donald Trump at campaign launch. Former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has launched his presidential campaign by slamming his former boss, Donald Trump, accusing him of abandoning conservative principles and being guilty of dereliction of duty on January 6, 2021. Mr. Pence became the first vice president in modern history to challenge the president under whom he served. He also criticized Mr. Trump for his stance on abortion and blamed him for endangering his family and everyone at the Capitol during the insurrection. This move by Mr. Pence will test the Republican Party's appetite for a socially conservative, mild-mannered and deeply religious candidate who has criticized the populist tide that has swept through his party under Mr. Trump. Italian court drops COVID case against former PM Conte and Health Minister Speranza. An Italian court has dismissed a case against former Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte and former Health Minister Roberto Speranza over their initial handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The case was dropped as the court stated that the allegations concerned administrative managers and could not be blamed on a health minister. The charges of manslaughter and mishandling the epidemic were transferred to a separate court that deals with government figures. Meanwhile, the Association of COVID Victims' Relatives expressed disappointment and bitterness over the court ruling. The remaining 17 suspects are still waiting to hear whether they will be put on trial or whether the case will be dropped. Title: Webcam captures spectacular images of burning lava as Kilauea volcano erupts in Hawaii. Kilauea, one of the world's most active volcanoes, erupted on Wednesday after a 3-month pause, displaying beautiful fountains of mesmerizing, glowing lava. According to the U.S. Geological Survey's Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, the eruption occurred within the Hailmomo crater in the summit caldera, generating lava flows on the crater floor's surface. However, there is no need to panic as all activity is within the closed area of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and there is no threat to communities, homes, or infrastructure. Visitors can witness the eruption from many overlooks, and the park is bracing itself for crowds to arrive. Title: Dozens evacuated as fire breaks out on charter flight at regional airport in Queensland. More than 70 people were safely evacuated from a charter flight in central Queensland on Wednesday evening after a fire was found in the tail of their plane before takeoff. The incident occurred at Moranbah Airport, owned by mining company BMA, which operates coal mines around the Bowen Basin. A spokesman for the Queensland Fire and Emergency Service stated the fire may have been caused by fuel leaking onto the exhaust. The aircraft remains at the airport, and there were no reports of injuries. Operations at the airport have resumed once it was safe to do so. Title: Perth police officer critical after horrific hit-and-run incident. A police officer in Perth is in critical condition following a hit-and-run incident in the early hours of Wednesday morning. The officer was run over and dragged under a car after pursuing a vehicle bearing stolen number plates in Ascot, a suburb in Perth's eastern region. 3 individuals were detained following the incident and are cooperating with the police. The officer was given CPR at the scene before being taken to a nearby hospital. Authorities are investigating the incident and are urging anyone with information to come forward. Twin earthquakes rattle Australia's east coast. 2 strong earthquakes hit far north Queensland and northern New South Wales overnight. Geosciences Australia reported a 4.3 magnitude earthquake about 125 kilometres off the coast of Cairns at 10:15 p.m., while a magnitude 3.1 earthquake hit near Grafton on the New South Wales north coast at 2 a.m. Although there have been no reports of injuries or damage, residents have reported feeling the earth shake. The far north Queensland earthquake was felt in Cairns, Atherton Tablelands, Innisfail and Babinda. There were no tsunami warnings issued. Victorian city breaks 100-year June rainfall record with 46 mm in one day. Ballarat, a western Victorian city, has broken a 100-year-old rainfall record for the month of June. According to the Bureau of Meteorology, heavy rains of 46 mm were recorded, which is the wettest June day for the city since 1923. The record-breaking rainfall was caused by a cold front from South Australia that also brought strong winds, keeping the Victoria State Emergency Service busy. The good news is that calmer and drier conditions are expected to prevail over the weekend, with a high-pressure system developing over South Australia. Third person charged over disappearance and death of Darwin man Tony Rowe. A 42-year-old man has been charged with several offences, including attempting to pervert the course of justice, following the discovery of Tony Rowe's remains south of Darwin last month. Mr. Rowe, a 36-year-old Darwin resident, went missing in May 2022. Last month, a 29-year-old man and a 21-year-old woman were charged and extradited from interstate over his disappearance. The 29-year-old man was initially charged with a violent act causing death before being charged with murder once Mr. Rowe's remains were found. The woman was charged with interfering with evidence and other offences. Title: SA Police's mount operations unit to relocate to Adelaide Airport, Premier says. The South Australian Police's Mounted Operations Unit will be moved from Theberton Barracks to Adelaide Airport Land, Premier Peter Malinauskas has announced. The move has been made to create space for the new Women's and Children's Hospital. The Premier stated that a new staging facility will be set up in the Adelaide CBD, on Wright Street, behind the Supreme Court building, on a vacant block of government-owned land. The relocation agreement has been signed between the state government and Adelaide Airport. Title: Daintree Croc Tour favourite Lizzie butchered, prompting investigation into suspected illegal killings. Queensland's Department of Environment and Science is investigating the decapitation of 2 crocodiles, including a decades-old female known to tour operators in the Daintree River, far north Queensland. A tour boat operator reported the recent death of Lizzie to authorities, who found the head and spine of the saltwater crocodile on the riverbank. The second decapitated crocodile was found at Cow Bay. The authorities have described both incidents as highly unusual and are investigating any possible links between them. Crocodiles are a vulnerable species protected under the Nature Conservation Act, and anyone found guilty of deliberately harming or killing them could face a maximum fine of $32,243. Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk commits to care overhaul after heartbreaking miscarriage. Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has revealed that she had a miscarriage in the past and has committed to improving clinical guidelines for women who suffer a pregnancy loss. This comes after an internal review was ordered into the care received by a woman in the emergency department of Ipswich Hospital after a miscarriage. Health Minister Shannon Fentiman has called for urgent creation of best practice guidelines for women who experience miscarriage. Palaszczuk has vowed to be personally involved in the process and insists that women deserve the very best care in such circumstances.